They are the hidden spaces, in between the palaces and the brothels, the mosques and the bathhouses, the libraries and the living quarters of the sultans. They are the lost histories of the concubines. There are places in history that seem gilded, shining with jewels and power, but if you step quietly inside, you find shadows instead of light. The Ottoman harem, whispered about in coffee houses, feared by diplomats, and dreamed of in Western imagination, was not a place of endless pleasure. As the stories once suggested, it was a prison. Thousands of women, some stolen as children, some sold by their families, some offered as political gifts, were gathered into the heart of the palace, shut away from the world. Few ever left. Their names were erased. Their stories were silenced. Their lives measured by ritual, by silence, by the invisible threads of rivalry. This is the story of those women, the concubines of the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire stretched across 3 continents and over 5 centuries, one of the longest-lasting dynasties in history. And for 5 centuries, the rumors around the world about the fabulous riches and the even more fabulous women of the harem persisted. European travelers and diplomats who found themselves invited to the Ottoman court knew that they would have to pass through the great gates of the harem before they could meet the sultan. And so, tales of intrigue and sexuality, an unimaginable luxury, swirled across Europe. The reality was very different. The word haram means sacred in Arabic, and it originally referred to any space set aside for women in a Muslim household. In practice, this meant that the women in the harem were separated from the men of the household, including the wives of the sultan, the concubines, servants, and eunuchs. The harem was both a residence and a prison, a place where women lived but could not leave. Once inside the great walls, there were many rules to follow. Women could be sent to the harem from many different ranks of society. Sometimes they were daughters of the sultan, or the sons of the sultan's wife. Sometimes they were captives from wars, or the children taken in tribute from conquered lands. Sometimes they were married women whose husbands had been made powerful governors in faraway lands. Most often, they were young girls, stolen from their families, or sold by them without any hope of return. Concubines were expected to live within the confines of the palace walls. Once inside, they were stripped of their identities, given new names, and forbidden to speak to anyone outside the harem. Mothers and daughters were separated and forced to live apart. Sisters became rivals. Friends became enemies. Each woman was alone. Life in the harem was regimented and ritualized. There were hours for washing and ritual purification, hours for prayer, for gossip, for eating and for sex. Slaves served the women, rubbing their bodies with fragrant oils and tending to their every need. Some women bore the sultan children, who might one day rule the empire. Others bore no children at all, and watched as their rivals bore the sultan's sons and daughters. If the sultan took a concubine to his bed, her status was elevated. She would be given more servants and a grander apartment, and the privilege of choosing other women to join her in the privacy of her chambers. Those privileges did not last forever. A woman who pleased the sultan might find favor for a time, but when the sultan grew bored, she would be sent away, cast out of the harem system, with little more than the clothes on her back. Most died childless and unknown, their bodies buried in unmarked graves in the courtyards of the palace. History remembers a few names, like that of Roxelana, a Russian captive who outlived the sultan and used her wits and influence to great advantage. Or the wife of the sultan, Hurrem Sultan, who has become the most famous of all the concubines, thanks to the TV series that immortalized her name. But for every Hurrem Sultan, there are thousands of others whose names we can never even begin to remember. They lived in the shadow of the sultan, unseen and unheard, their whispers lost to the wind. Did they dream of escape? Did they plot in secret? Did they love or hate each other? Did they curse the Sultan, or did they love him? We will never know. But as you stand in the courtyard of Topkapi Palace today, looking up at the rooms where they lived, you can almost hear the whispers of their voices. You can almost see the shadows of their presence in the corners and the arches. If you listen closely, you can almost hear their footsteps on the marble floors, the sound of 1,000 women walking away from the past. The harem was a world within a world, hidden behind the marble courtyards and golden gates of Topkapi Palace. It was a place where the sun set early and secrets whispered on silk cushions. To the outside, the palace was a fortress of power, a display of wealth and dominion. But to the women inside, the harem was a maze with no exit. It was a world of shadows and half-truths, where every glance was judged, and every smile could be your last. For the women of the harem were not prisoners. Not exactly. They were more like hostages of a different kind. They had their freedom, but it meant nothing. At dawn, they awoke to the soft call of attendants. The first sound of the day was not freedom, but footsteps echoing in corridors. Measured, deliberate, always watched. The women were organized like soldiers. Though no weapons were allowed, not even words. Every girl belonged to a rank. The lowest were the servants, those who waited at the Sultan's command. Above them were the concubines, those who shared his bed, but not his heart. And at the very top, like jewels in a crown, were the favorites, the women chosen to share the Sultan's chamber. But even the favored were not free. Each morning began with ritual cleansing, bowls of rose water, the faint scent of incense rising in still air would mingle with the soft murmur of prayers. Women would wash themselves with freezing cold water from marble basins, their bodies bent and yielding like willow branches. Then they would wait, sometimes for hours, for the summons that might come or might not come. A favorite might bathe twice a day, a concubine once, a servant girl never. When the Sultan chose to visit the harem, it was like an invasion of privacy. The quiet rituals, the stolen moments of privacy, all vanished when his entourage arrived. The women knew the signs, the heavy tread of the Sultan's guards, the rustle of silk as imperial vestments were adjusted, the censer bearers moving like shadows at the gate. When he entered the room, all eyes were on him, all smiles were sweet. Only the Sultan could see the envy, the bitterness, the hatred simmering just below the surface. He was God in this world, yes, but he was also a man, and men, as they say, are all the same. He liked the young ones, those who could still turn a man's head. So girls as young as 12 were sent to please him, to warm his bed. Older women watched, their faces lined with disappointment, their smiles brittle and fake. Having a child was a risk, a dangerous game. If the Sultan noticed the girl, she might rise in rank, but only if the baby was a boy. If it was a girl, the mother and child would be thrown out into the streets. No mother could hope for much love from the Sultan. He might hold the child once, twice, then send it away to be raised in a separate wing of the palace. A small price to pay for the favor of the Sultan. But even the Sultan's favor could fade. When it did, the woman would be sent away, cast out from the world she once ruled, stripped of her finery, and forced to marry one of the Sultan's servants. She would have to live out the rest of her days, knowing that she once held unimaginable power in her hands. Yes, the harem was a world of its own, a gilded cage of marble and gold. Life there was not easy. Not by a long shot, but life outside was harder, much harder. For once you stepped foot in the harem, you couldn't leave unless the Sultan let you. And the walls of Topkapi Palace were very high. They studied languages, embroidery, music, lessons not of freedom, but of survival. A concubine who failed to entertain was invisible. and invisibility meant exile within the very walls she could never leave. Rivalries were silent wars. A glance, a whispered rumor, a gift placed on the wrong cushion. These small acts could determine a woman's fate. One wrong step, and she was dismissed. Her days confined to silence in the back chambers. And yet there was no rebellion, only patience. Because the rules were unbreakable, no woman entered the harem of her own will, and none left without permission. The gilded doors closed like the lid of a jeweled box. From the outside, the harem shimmered with beauty. Inside, it was a cage that held thousands of women, waiting for a life that would never come. This is the story of one of them. It starts like all good stories do, with a journey, across mountains and deserts. Through scorching heat and bitter cold, a caravan travels. Its destination, a city of gold, where a new emperor has just taken the throne. Within its dazzling walls, he awaits his bride, a girl who may have been born a princess, but is now a pawn in a game of power and alliance. On the day she enters the city, the princess is to don a veil and ride on a golden howdah, on the back of an elephant with lit candle abbas on its tusks. Her every move watched by the royal spies. The journey takes an hour, but for the princess, it feels like an eternity. She hears the sound of drums and watches men dancing on the elephant's tusks, their shadows long and distorted in the gathering dusk. When they finally reach the palace, she sees the vastness of its courtyard and the gleam of 1,000 candles in its windows. She has entered the lion's den. Now comes the most important part of the journey. The walk from the entrance to the music room, where the emperor awaits. A corridor of swords. Thousands of pairs of eyes watching from behind the curtains. Every maiden hopes to be chosen by the emperor, but he has already chosen Shireen, daughter of the king of Kashmir, a girl who doesn't even know what it means to be desired. Now comes the test. A game of polo played on horses, bareback, blindfolded, with swords in hand. Each girl tries to hit the ball into the opposing team's goal. The prize, a garland of white flowers, a symbol of purity, and the right to enter the emperor's court. Shireen doesn't play. Instead, she sits on a golden howdah, watching the other girls, their laughter echoing through the courtyard. Soon, only 2 remain, each riding a white horse. One of them is beautiful, with raven hair and eyes that shine like polished obsidian. The other is ordinary, yet her heart beats like a drum. In the end, it is the ordinary girl who wins. As the crowd cheers and the musicians begin to play, the emperor enters on a golden howdah, on the back of an elephant with lit candle abbas on its tusks. His face is hidden behind a golden net. All the girls bow before him, except Shireen. She looks away, her chin held high. The emperor stops in front of her. This is the moment that will change her life forever. The moment he will unveil his face and claim her as his bride. But that's not what happens. As the crowd watches in stunned silence, the emperor reaches out, not to unveil his face, but to touch the white mark on her forehead, the mark of the chosen one. Then he does something no one ever expects. He takes off his net and places it on her head, covering her face. The crowd gasps, but the emperor ignores them. He lifts the heavy veil and helps her mount his horse. As they ride out of the city together, the crowds part before them, afraid to touch the hem of her garment or the net on her face. Theirs is a love forbidden, a love that can never be spoken of. Theirs is a love that must remain a secret, hidden from the world. For in this world, a woman's beauty is her only currency, and the emperor has just bought her. So begins the journey of 1,000 ships, a tale as old as time, a story of love, loss, and longing. When I first saw the series, I was immediately intrigued by this character. Who was she? How did she get to be so powerful? What did she do? Was she good or bad? To my surprise, After finishing the entire series, I still have no answers for these questions. Her story is one of the biggest mysteries in the series. Hurrem Sultan's story is one of mystery and secrecy. Even her name is a puzzle. Hurrem is a common word in Turkish, meaning cheerful or merry, yet for some reason, her official title's usually translated as Roxelana, which is a Ukrainian name. So why would they give her a Ukrainian name when she's a Turkic character? It might be because she was supposed to be a Russian character originally. But due to some political reasons, Russia was renamed to Ukraine. So her name, which was originally spelled Ruslana, got altered to Roxelana. Now this is just a theory. There is no real proof for it, but if we look at her features, she looks very much Russian rather than Ukrainian. Hurrem Sultan is one of the longest-lived ships in the series. Unlike most of the harems, where the Sultan has multiple wives and concubines, here he only has one main wife and numerous concubines. We don't know much about her early life and how she got to the harem. The series tells us that she was brought to the Sultan as a gift by his general, but there are some contradictions in their backstory. If you pay attention, it's hard to pin down exactly where she's from. At one point, it's implied that she is a slave from Ukraine, but later on, we see that she has knowledge of European politics and culture, making her seem more like a noblewoman. Even her ethnicity is ambiguous. In the subtitles, we often see her referred to as Russian, but at times she's also called Circassian. These loose cannons make her backstory mysterious and intriguing, although there are some clues about her past. Her first scene appears in Season 1, Episode 13. Here we see that she is captured by Tatars and sold in a slave market. When Selim is passing through that city, he gets her as a gift from the slave trader. The slave trade was a major industry at the time, and the Tatars were known to capture many slaves. The fact that she's a captive adds an element of intrigue to her character. You can't help but wonder what kind of person she was before she was captured and sold. As she is brought to Topkapi Palace, we can tell that she is sad and scared, but also curious and determined to adapt to her new reality. Roxelana makes an entrance into the Sultan's life in Season 1, Episode 26. She appears in front of the Sultan, sitting on a carpet and reading a book. This scene establishes two important aspects of her character. First, she is highly educated, which is unusual for a woman of her time and status. Second, she is not afraid to assert herself. As shown by her direct gaze and confident demeanor, she doesn't behave like a typical harem girl who is submissive and subservient to the Sultan. This sets her apart from the other women in the harem and foreshadows her future rise to power. Throughout the series, we see Roxelana defy expectations and challenge norms. Despite being a captive and a lowly concubine, she becomes the Sultan's favorite and eventually his wife. She gives birth to several children, including a son, which was unheard of for a concubine at the time. Moreover, she manages to outlive the Sultan and ensures that her son succeeds him to the throne. All of these achievements are remarkable, considering the constraints placed on women in Ottoman society. One of the most fascinating aspects of Roxelana's character is her intelligence. She is portrayed as a shrewd and calculating individual who uses her wits to navigate the treacherous waters of the Ottoman court. For example, in Season 3, Episode 4, she tricks the Sultan's wife, Mihrimah, into giving her a valuable necklace by pretending to be ill. Later, she uses this necklace as leverage against Mahidevran, another concubine who threatens her position in the harem. Roxelana is also adept at playing the long game, as evidenced by her decision to exile Mahidevran to the Old Palace in Season 4, Episode 37. By removing her main rival, Roxelana secures her own position in the harem and paves the way for her son to become the heir apparent. Another important quality of Roxelana's character is her resilience. Despite facing numerous obstacles and setbacks, including the death of her daughter and the machinations of her enemies, she remains steadfast in her pursuit of power and influence. For instance, in Season 5, Episode 59, she recovers from a near-fatal poisoning attempt orchestrated by one of her rivals. Furthermore, when she is exiled from the palace in Season 6, Episode 83, she does not despair, but instead plots a comeback with the help of her son. Her determination to overcome adversity and claim her rightful place in the palace hierarchy is truly inspiring. Although Roxelana is often portrayed as a cunning and ruthless character, she also displays moments of compassion and empathy. In Season 5, Episode 53, for example, she shows kindness to a young slave girl named Nigar by offering her support and guidance. Similarly, in Season 6, Episode 80, she stands up for the rights of a female official who is being harassed by a male member of the court. These acts of charity and advocacy demonstrate that Roxelana is not just a power-hungry villain, but a complex human being with both positive and negative qualities. Despite her many accomplishments and enduring legacy, Roxelana's story has not been without its critics. Some historians argue that her portrayal in the series is inaccurate and biased, portraying her as a sinister figure who uses her sexuality and cunning to manipulate the Sultan and gain power. Others criticize the series for promoting harmful stereotypes about Muslim and Ottoman society, painting it as inherently violent and oppressive towards women. However, despite these criticisms, Roxelana's story continues to captivate audiences and inspire debate and discussion about her legacy. Her character serves as a reminder that history is complex and nuanced, and that even the most powerful and influential women can be misunderstood and marginalized. Roxelana's legacy is a testament to the enduring appeal of her character and the impact she has had on popular culture. She has become a symbol of female empowerment and resistance against societal norms and expectations. Her story continues to inspire awe and admiration, and she remains one of the most enigmatic and unforgettable characters in history. What makes this series so compelling is that it avoids painting Roxelana as a stereotypical femme fatale. Instead, it presents her as a multi-dimensional character with both strengths and weaknesses. Moreover, the series challenges the notion of the passive and submissive harem girl by showcasing Roxelana's agency and determination to shape her own destiny. In conclusion, Roxelana's story is a testament to the power of female ambition and resilience in the face of societal constraints and gender norms. Her journey from a captive concubine to the Sultan's beloved wife and mother of his heir is a remarkable achievement that defies the odds and challenges conventional historical narratives. Despite facing numerous obstacles and setbacks, Roxelana remains steadfast in her pursuit of power and influence, demonstrating an impressive level of intelligence, resourcefulness, and tenacity. Her legacy continues to inspire awe and admiration, and she remains an iconic symbol of female empowerment and resistance against societal norms and expectations. In the opulent chambers of the Sultan's palace, nestled amidst the silk and the shadows, resided the harem, a labyrinth of intrigue where power and desire intertwined in a dangerous dance. Now, we often think of it as a place of leisure, a place of waiting where the Sultan's women spent their days lounging in the night anticipating the Sultan's pleasure. But that is only half the story, for within the serene confines of the harem walls, there existed a darker, more sinister undercurrent. You see, The harem was also a place of tests, a testing ground for the sultan's women. Tests of obedience, tests of purity, tests of silence. When new girls arrived at the harem, they were not welcomed with open arms. No, they were met with suspicion and mistrust. Their value was not measured by their spirit, nor their mind, but by the condition of their bodies. In this world of hidden agendas and veiled intentions, the whispers travelled faster than the wind, carrying tales of the sultan's favour and the intrigues that unfolded within the harem. To navigate this treacherous terrain, one had to be cautious, for every move was scrutinised, every glance was weighed. The sultan's women lived in a constant state of alert, treading carefully to avoid becoming pawns in a deadly game. At the heart of this intricate web of deceit and desire, the palace physicians played a pivotal role. They were the gatekeepers of a girl's reputation, tasked with the solemn duty of examining these young women, always women themselves, but bound by duty to perform these intimate examinations. These whispered about rituals, were never recorded in writing. For what purpose? To cast doubt or to accuse. But those who passed these examinations were deemed worthy, groomed for service in the sultan's court. Those who failed, well, they vanished from the records, erased from existence as if they never were. Within the secluded chambers of the harem, an air of mystery and secrecy pervaded. Every woman's past was shrouded in enigma, known only to her and the palace walls. As new girls entered this enigmatic realm, they brought with them stories untold, dreams and aspirations, fears and secrets. But here within the harem, those stories were put on hold. Their past became their present, and their futures uncertain. As years turned into decades, the harem became a place of testing, not just for the women, but for the very essence of their being. For within its walls, a chilling transformation took place. The harem was filled with children who were raised not as daughters, but as offerings, potential offerings, and so purity became a form of currency, a means to secure a future, a ticket to survival. In this intricate game of power and passion, the stakes were high. A sultan's favour could elevate a woman to unimaginable heights, bestowing upon her luxury, power, and prestige. But it could also lead to ruin, for the sultan's heart was as fickle as the desert winds, changing direction without a moment's notice. As the sun set over the horizon, casting long shadows across the palace grounds, the true nature of the harem was revealed. It was a battleground where women fought not with swords, but with glances, with subtle gestures, and unspoken words. They maneuvered through the labyrinth of the harem, each step laden with meaning, each interaction a calculated move. For within this opulent prison of desire, loyalty was a virtue, but trust was a luxury they could not afford. In the intricate game of the harem, where secrets whispered and motives remained hidden, one must always be vigilant. These are the stories I love, the ones that feel like history has been holding its breath and now exhales a long, slow story all at once. Today we are in Istanbul, or rather, we are in the great palace of the sultans, the one that cradled empires between the Black Sea and the Mediterranean, the one whose marble bones still echo with the whispers of power. We are here in the 16th century. We are inside the women's quarters, known as the harem. And today, we listen to the unspoken stories, the ones that history almost forgot. In the Grand Bazaar of Istanbul, amidst the maze of alleys and the clamour of trade, a young girl is sold. Not an uncommon occurrence within these vast palace walls. She is taken to the sultan's wife, the one who holds his heart and his trust. A promise is made. The girl will be cherished, cared for, educated. She will have silks to drape her slender frame in, and jewels to adorn her dark hair with. All this if she remains what she is bought to be, property. The rules did not stop with the beginning of a life. They extended also to its interruption, when a concubine carried a child without permission, or when a pregnancy threatened to complicate the already intricate dance of succession. There were ways to end it, quiet, unseen, spoken of only in hushed tones, forced endings, described in words too clinical to capture the weight of them. For centuries, the Sultan's wives and concubines had been bargaining chips in a game of power played by men. Now the Sultan's wife walks the marble halls of the harem, her steps echoing the beat of her heavy heart. In her arms, a doll made of cloth and wood, a cruel parody of the life it cannot hold. Her son, the heir apparent, has just turned 10 years old. His father, the Sultan, doted on him, having him tutored by the best minds in the empire. But with this son, a shadow looms. If he sired another heir, one outside the bounds of wedlock, it would tear the empire apart. The Sultan would disallow any challenge to his son's legitimacy. So the wife moves through the palace, her eyes downcast, hiding the truth from the world, hiding it from herself. The Sultan must not know. He must not suspect. For her, there is only the hope that this little secret will one day turn into a distant memory. It was control of the most intimate kind. The body was not her own. It belonged to the dynasty. And then there were the punishments. The palace walls held many secrets, but one echoed more than any other. The Sultan's women were forbidden to love, to desire anyone but him. To even think of another man was a betrayal of his trust. And yet, sometimes the walls couldn't contain the whispers of the forbidden love, and then the walls would fall. If a concubine let desire take hold of her, if she dared to speak of a man other than the Sultan, her punishment was rarely written down. But stories survived, of women sewn into sacks, cast into the dark waters of the Bosphorus. No marks left behind, only ripples on the surface, quickly gone. We, the visitors of today, stand where countless women have walked before us. On this very spot, the echoes of their stifled desires still linger. These stories drift through time like ghosts, because they were never admitted openly. The empire kept its silence. The harem kept its walls. And so, the taboos remain, half seen, like shadows in the corners of a forgotten room. The stories wait, and if we listen closely, perhaps we can hear them. The whisper of silk against marble, the murmur of voices veiled, the splash of water on stone, the silent scream of a woman's heart. So what was life like inside the Ottoman Empire's harem? Let's find out. Welcome to my channel. At the heart of empire, power was absolute. And when power is absolute, fear becomes its shadow. The Sultan's word could grant life, or it could erase it. His command was law, but also impulse, desire, suspicion. The harem was both his pleasure and his burden. 1,000 women waiting, watching, hoping for his glance. But in numbers, there was danger. Rivalries could spill beyond the walls. Factions could form. And in a palace built on silence, whispers could become storms. So when fear rose, the Sultan's solution was final. Stories tell of nights when boats drifted silently into the Bosphorus. On them, sacks moved heavily, filled not with grain, but with the bodies of women, concubines whose loyalty was doubted, concubines whose existence was no longer convenient. There are no records in the empire's ledgers, no dates carved in stone, only travelers' tales, diplomats' letters, fragments of rumor preserved like smoke in the wind. Some say entire harems were drowned in a single night, hundreds of women silenced beneath the black water, so that no scandal could ever reach the world outside. The elite called it protection, the historians call it control, but for the women themselves, it was only erasure. Even those who survived knew this truth. They were not wives, not companions, not queens. They were shadows, kept behind walls of marble and gold, at the mercy of a man whose whims decided whether they lived another day. This is Untold, an original series from a History Channel. This first episode is titled The Weight of Silence. At the top of the Ottoman world, power was not only about armies and empires, it was about control over silence. And in that silence, countless lives disappeared. Istanbul, the city once known as Constantinople, the jewel of the Byzantine world, now the seat of the expanding Ottoman Empire. Its Hagia Sophia, once a church, now a mosque. Its echoes still resonated with the old ways, the old habits. In its courtyards and chambers, a new order was rising, and at the center of this intricate dance of power and politics stood the women, the Sultan's wife, his consort, his concubine. They navigated a world where every smile could be a weapon and every glance a command. Their lives, a delicate balance of silk and steel, of allure and obligation, of love and fear, for their world had its own rules, unwritten but immutable. You do not look a woman in the eye in the Ottoman court. To meet a man's gaze directly was considered bold, even disrespectful. Women were taught to lower their eyes demurely, to turn away gracefully, to veil their faces demurely, to drape their bodies in layers of meaning. But it wasn't just about modesty, it was about power. A woman's unveiled face was her most potent weapon. Her gaze could challenge, seduce, accuse, and in one fleeting moment, change the course of lives. When Sultan Bayezid II came to power in 1481, Istanbul was a city on the edge of two worlds. The old Christian traditions clung closely to the palaces and streets, whispering of a time when women walked freely and spoke their minds. Yet the new Islamic order demanded modesty, separation, silence. And in this clash of cultures, women became the battleground. Painted portraits show women in gowns with slits, skirts hitching up, bare arms and legs, open necks, low backs, red lips, arched eyebrows, dark kohl around their almond eyes. However, these images are deceptive. The women depicted wear heavy garments underneath. Their poses are carefully crafted to conceal rather than reveal. In reality, the Ottoman women's clothing was designed to obscure and conceal. Long flowing robes covered their figures from head to toe, leaving only their faces and hands exposed. Their hairstyles, elaborate towers of braids and curls, adorned with precious stones and golden bands, were meant to accentuate their feminine beauty while keeping their bodies hidden. The veil was more than a religious symbol. It was a shield and a secret. Behind the veil, a woman could observe the world without being seen. Through the latticework of its openings, she could glimpse the courtyard, the gardens, the world outside the palace walls, yet remain unseen. The Sultan's wife, Hurrem Sultan, born Roxelana, a slave girl from the shores of the Black Sea. She was captured by Tatars, sold to a slave trader, and then purchased by the Sultan. At the age of 17, she bore the Sultan his son, a healthy baby boy. That moment shifted the balance of power. No longer just a concubine, Hurrem Sultan rose to become the Sultan's favorite. She became the mother of his heir, wielding influence that few women in the Ottoman Empire had ever known. Her story, a testament to the cunning and resilience of a woman who dared to navigate the perilous waters of the Sultan's favor. The palace walls echoed with the whispers of intrigue, of plots and rivalries, for in the heart of the Ottoman Empire, where power was absolute, suspicion reigned supreme. The Sultan's wives and concubines were not just prisoners of their circumstances, they were prisoners of their own beauty. In the vast labyrinth of the imperial palace, the Sultan's wives and concubines were confined to the secluded quarters known as the harem. It was a place where their freedom ended, and the Sultan's watchful gaze began. Within the four walls of the harem, the women's lives revolved around one central point: the Sultan's pleasure. They were judged solely on their ability to capture his attention, to satisfy his desires, and to bear him a male heir. If the Sultan found favor in a woman, she was elevated to the rank of a wife. But if he turned his attention elsewhere, she risked being forgotten, neglected, cast aside in the relentless pursuit of novelty. The Sultan's affections were like the tides of the sea, unpredictable and merciless. When the tide went out, some women were left high and dry, stripped of their power and prestige. Once the Sultan's interest waned, they were relegated to the shadowy corners of the harem, their days filled with envy and resentment as they watched other women bask in the Sultan's favor. The air in the harem was thick with tension and rivalry. Each wife and concubine was locked in a silent battle, a competition for the Sultan's favor. As the Sultan doted on one woman today, there was always another waiting in the wings, eager to capture his attention. The women resorted to petty acts of revenge, spreading rumors, planting seeds of doubt in the Sultan's mind. Anything to ensure that their rivals wouldn't steal their place in the Sultan's heart. Jealousy, they say, is a green-eyed monster, and in the Ottoman harem, it grew fangs. Power at the top of the Ottoman world was not only about armies and empires, it was about control over silence. And in that silence, countless lives disappeared. The gilded palace glittered in daylight, but beneath, in its deepest chambers, lay the weight of forgotten women. Their stories did not end with rebellion. They ended with water, with darkness, with quiet that was never broken. The young concubine stood before the Sultan, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. Her steps echoed in the vast chamber, each footstep taking her closer to the center of power, closer to the man who could make her dreams come true, or crush her with a single word. Tonight was her turn, her moment in the Sultan's gaze. He sat on his ornate throne, his eyes like pools of liquid obsidian, his presence commanding, intimidating. The concubine knew that tonight her life would change. The question was, how? The years in the Ottoman Empire blurred into a kaleidoscope of colors and rituals. Seasons turned into a jumble of days and nights. For the concubines, time was marked by the Sultan's whims, the ebb and flow of his affection, the birth of heirs, and the intrigues of the court. Life revolved around the unspoken rules of the harem. Every gesture, every glance, every word carried a hidden meaning. The concubines learned to read these signs, to decipher the language of the harem. One wrong move, one misspoken word, and they risked incurring the Sultan's wrath. The smallest mistake could shatter the fragile balance of their lives. In the labyrinth of the Ottoman palace, the concubines were players in a game they didn't understand. The rules were written in whispers, the stakes were immeasurable, and the grand prize, the Sultan's love, was as elusive as the desert wind. Some women born into privilege, others bought, some as young as 12 years old. They came from diverse backgrounds, speaking different languages, following different customs, but within the confines of the harem, their differences were erased. They were all just concubines, vying for the same elusive prize. The Sultan's attention in a world where their identities ceased to matter. What mattered was the promise of escape, the hope that they could climb the social ladder and carve a new destiny for themselves. The harem was not merely a place of confinement, it was a crucible of ambition. The women were forged in the fires of competition, tempered by the need to survive. As the Sultan's favor ebbed and flowed, the concubines found solace in their shared stories, their common hopes and dreams. In the tapestry of the Ottoman Empire, each concubine wove her own thread, a unique blend of resilience, ambition, and despair. Their stories, though silenced by the palace walls, were far from over. And so, when we speak of the Ottoman court, when we picture the domes and mosaics, the silks and jewels, we must also remember the prison within the palace, the women who never left, the voices that never carried, the lives that dissolved into silence. The harem was not only a place of beauty, it was a place of waiting, of fear, of forgotten history. And in the stillness of those corridors, you can almost hear them still,